Hi there, and welcome to the Mindful Messenger Show brought to you by the Liberty Beacon Media Project. My name is Amanda Johnson, and today we are talking to Kathy Sparrow about mindful transformation through writing. Kathy Sparrow is not just my dear friend and partner in crime when it comes to helping authors with their books, but she herself is an award-winning author, message strategist, and writing and publishing consultant. She has over 3 decades of experience in the publishing world on both sides of the editorial desk, in both magazines and books. She's the co-author of the international best-selling book, Ignite Your Leadership, Proven Tools for Leaders to Energize Teams, Fuel Momentum, and Accelerate Results. Her chapter, The Power of Your Story, Discovering Your Why and Dissolving Your Why Nots. An expert in narrative theory and the journey of self-discovery, she assists individuals in embracing change and expressing themselves with confidence, awareness, and courage, using the tools of writing, fly fishing, and intentional conversation. She guides her clients to express themselves authentically and transparently, often standing with them at the edge of greater personal and professional development. Her latest project is a summit, Fearless Leadership, How to Overcome the Fear of Being Seen and Heard so that your message inspires and transforms the world, which will air in the spring. Welcome, Kathy.
Thank you. Whew. It's like, wow, do I really do all that?
Isn't it funny when you look back and you're just like, wow, check all of that out.
Yeah.
You are accomplished, which is why I love having you on my team.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
It all began in 2009. I was thinking about when we met.
Sure did. Like several lifetimes ago.
Yeah, something like that.
And I want to say before too is that before we get started, Kathy is probably the person that I've had the most conversations with, that we've gotten to the end of the conversation and thought, dang, we should have recorded that. It was some really juicy stuff that other people should have heard. And so, so I have that extra layer of excitement today because we are actually recording and people are actually going to listen in and eavesdrop on this conversation. So yeah, we're here.
We're here.
So we'll talk about all of the ways that we work and play together, but I'd love for you to start out by telling us kind of what started you on this journey of writing. What does your creative journey look like?
Oh, I wanted to write since I want to say 8 years old. You know, it was in me. I had one of my professors say that I was born to write, because when I don't write, I get bitchy. I'm not connected with myself, and I'm not listening to myself and doing really what I'm called to do. So began a long time ago. So 8 years old, but then in high school, I actually had a guidance counselor tell me I would never be a writer. And he put me in a business track. And he sat on my shoulder, you know, whispering that in my ear for years until I finally said, I'm writing. And this was in upstate New York. And I wrote a piece on overcoming fear of climbing when I took my kids hiking on Monument Mountain. Typed it out, if that says anything. Put it in the mailbox and held my breath to, I sent it to a local paper. They did a lot of arts and culture stories. And the editor called me a few days later and said, I can't use that piece because it doesn't fit, but I love your writing. And I began my professional writing journey. So I was in my mid-20s then. And I got to play with some really cool people. Yeah. So, and it's just blossomed since then. I think that over time, I realized that writing was a transformational tool. And when I did my master's about 10 years ago, a little bit longer than that, I studied the healing power of writing, of telling our story. And it's true. When we read someone else's work, we see ourselves in that. But as we're writing, we're also transforming. It's a discovery process. We learn about ourselves through writing.
Yeah, absolutely. And you were definitely one of the first people to help me realize that for myself. But we'll share that story in a few minutes. For you, like, what was the first, I know you have a novel out. Was that your first work that you did, or besides writing for magazines and such? What was the first personal piece that you did?
Oh God. I think probably the first, I wrote a novel and I lost it in my first computer. It's gone. Yeah, I know. It's like I've been trying to find it because it was really good. I sent it to readers and everything, and then in the midst of divorces and moving, because like a lot of us, I was hiding, didn't think it was good enough, so I left it, someplace, so in the ethers. But then probably the next biggest piece was On the Mother Lagoon, Fly Fishing and the Spiritual Journey, which wasn't a novel. It was my memoir about learning how to fly fish in the lower Laguna Madre and realizing that sport is a spiritual practice, and also being in nature. And it chronicled my journey to become a Coast Guard captain and take people fly fishing. Like I knew that was part of my contract. So that was the next one. Then of course my thesis, and then I've got a lot of stuff in the can that I haven't shared. But it's coming. There is a novel coming very soon, The Whispered Teachings of Grandmother Trout, and I use fly fishing as a backdrop, and it's a women's coming of age novel. So that's back from my copy editor, and I just have to look at it and then do the rest.
So exciting. So exciting. And I love learning all of these extra details about people that I love and get to work with all the time. Like, wow, you were 14 when I love that stuff. So when you started working on your first big piece, maybe it was that piece of fiction that you lost in the ethers, or maybe the one after it, but what was, that transformational process? What did that look like for you? What were some of the things that you came up against as you were working through the process of writing?
So that novel, which is probably why I didn't need to see it, I wrote myself out of my first marriage.
Ooh.
Yeah,
How'd you do that?
Where?
How did you do that? Tell us how.
God, it was like, I remembered walking my kids to school one day and just getting the title, Masks of Illusion, and suddenly the story just started coming, and I killed off the husband in the novel in the first chapter. And it was like, and then I helped the protagonist grow. I had her grow through being a single mom and whatnot. And then I realized what I was doing. It was like, oh, I get it. As she was strengthening.
Wow.
And it probably took me a couple more years to leave the marriage, but I did that. That was how I left. That character really helped me grow.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how many times I'll say it on this show. I should just apologize to the audience in advance, because I'll probably say this a million times. But when we watch shows on TV or we're watching movies, how many times do we know exactly what that character needs to do? Like, she should leave him right now, never look back, right? Like, we know the exact thing. And then we go back to a relationship just like that. We're like, I have no idea what to do here. And we do. So it's no wonder to me that, people, especially people who write fiction, I think that's a whole other art form beyond what you and I are accustomed to working on with clients, which is more like memoir, where they're really focused on, this is my story. But this idea that in fiction, you choose your character and then you kind of let that character take you where the character will take you. Like, no wonder you're writing a new story. I mean, you essentially get to live it before you have to take actual steps in the real world.
Yeah, exactly. And what you just said is that I had a professor at Wesleyan when I was taking a novel writing course, grad course, and she said, don't be surprised if your characters get up and do something you hadn't planned. And I went, oh yeah, right. Well, it was actually in that story, the protagonist had a man that she fell in love with. They were actually friends for a long time. And I wrote a date rape scene. It was like, where did that come from? But yeah, I know. But it did. But our characters do take it. And it was another place of growth for her. She learned to listen to her soul, to listen to her own wisdom, you know, through these trials and tribulations. All those details of that novel are coming back to me now. It's like, oh yeah, how long have I been doing this? Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Does it feel complete, or do you ever think I could go back and rewrite that or write it better than the first time?
You know, I have about half of it. I was able to salvage half of it. And I have thought about going back and working on it, but I'm not sure if I need to. Because I have a lot of other things I'm doing. You know, it's like the novel Grandmother Trout, and then I wanted to do a screenplay for that as well. And I have done screenplay. One was opted, so that's cool, and I love that platform. And then this whole project about being seen, you know, having the courage to be seen. That's taking on it's not only going to be a summit, there's a book coming out of that as well, because that is one of the problems that we as writers and messengers face. It's like that doubt comes over us, you know, that guidance counselor that sat on my shoulder, you know, and put me in a heap the day before I defended my thesis. And who are you to be writing this, right? You'll never be a writer. Who are you? No, and it's like, you got to knock that person off and just get out there, because our messages are so important. They do help other people. As we grow.
Yeah, being seen is a really big conversation when it comes to a lot of my clients. And I know that it's one of my number one things that I've had to work on over the last 10 years, and still have a lot of room to grow there, a lot of room to grow. So with you, when you're looking at some of these projects that have really meant so much to you, what are some of the places where you find yourself repeatedly getting stuck? Because you're a prolific writer. So are there like trapdoors that you always find yourself falling into as you're writing characters or different pieces?
Well, I think one of the things that I do is it's so easy to put my clients' work first. Like, oh, I've got a deadline for them, so I'm just going to work on that. Then I'll write tomorrow. I put my writing second up until recently. And then, I mean, I go in spurts. The interesting thing, though, is when a project really grabs me, I'll go in and there's no coming up until I get to the place where I've got a really good draft. And it's almost like, I remember when I was working on Grandmother Trout, I was still in Texas. And I think my husband was away. This wasn't the husband I killed off. This was my second one in the novel.
Yeah, we should clarify that. Killed off
in the novel.
In the novel.
Yes, in the novel. Oh my gosh. My husband was away, and I had the house to myself, and we lived in the lodge, and there was nobody around. And I spent like 3 days just working on that novel. And I remember being in the kitchen. It was almost like the characters were with me. So I can go deep. I think, though, what happens, and I think this happens to a lot of people, especially at the beginning of a project, there has to be momentum that's built. And there is some fear, because we're going like, what the hell do I know about being seen, right? How do I know? Well, I do. You know, I really have done a lot of work, and it comes up. You know, there are times when I have to go into hiding when I'm processing some stuff. You know, I don't post to Facebook regularly. I don't blog regularly, because when I'm processing, I'm not ready to share what it is I'm doing, because it's not fully baked. Mm-hmm. And with that said, though, I think we can get into a space of hitting that wall and just staying in that safety zone, not going over that edge. I call it dancing at the edge, where that edge is between us and our next level of growth, influence, whatever we want to call it. And I think it's easy to stay comfortable. Gay Hendricks calls that the zone of excellence. I'm really good at my zone of excellence. I'm a great editor. I have my client's voice in my head as I'm working. There's no differentiation between their voice and mine. I can zip things off. I know messages. I hear people. That's it. And yet my zone of genius is about putting my own work out there. And it's just, I can, like everybody else, I can stay comfortable. And yet it's exciting when I cross over. It's like, then it grabs me. And it's like, ooh, then oh yeah, I got clients I got to work on too, so then it kind of switches, it goes. So I think a way around that is that I build in time now to work every day on my own projects, even if it's just 15 minutes on my busier days. And then, love Sunday morning writing. That's my favorite. Yeah. That's my writing time. So.
Yeah. What is your process for writing when it comes to fiction and even nonfiction? Because you've done both. What is generally your process of getting started?
Well, usually the idea just comes to me. It's not like I go, well, what do I want to write about next? It just pops in. It's usually something that have been challenged with and have some sort of process of overcoming. And then sometimes that process is I'll write for 15 minutes in the morning just to clear my brain, kind of like Julia Cameron's morning pages, but I do it on the computer. But then I'll sit down and mind map. I'll come up with the questions that I want to answer about that particular topic, and I'll mind map. I've got 9x12 drawing pads, and I also have like an 18x36 or whatever size it is drawing pad, and I'll actually sit on the floor and I'll mind map. And then when I find quotes that fit that, I'll either I'll type them up or copy and paste them, and I'll paste them to glue them to that particular mind map so I have them. And then eventually I start writing. And I just chunk it down. Instead of writing the book, I'm writing the chapter, maybe a page at a time.
Yeah.
Until the draft's done.
Yeah. So what was that?
Until the draft's done. Then there's a whole nother process after that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there is. Unless you have to do it in 4 weeks like I did, and then it's much faster. That's why I like those high pressure deadlines, because then I don't hate my book as much by the end as some people do. Just like, oh God, I cannot look at this one more time. Like, there's probably a lot of errors in there, but I had like a bunch of people look at it, got the point across. We're good.
Yeah. I think I've never put myself on a 4-week deadline.
Well, I didn't do that intentionally either. I gave myself 6 months, and then I had a client contact me. You remember Ruben? And he said that, the doctor's given him 30 days. So we kind of like cleared the deck all the way across, you and my other team members, to make that happen. And,
right, yeah.
And so then I ended up with, 3 weeks to write the book. It's crazy. That was crazy. So then when you're looking at these processes, and I know that when we first met, we met in a place where everyone was there to learn how to speak and how to write more powerfully. And we made this really hilarious connection where you're like, I don't know why I need you to help me write my book, but I think I do. And I think that was just our souls being like, we're supposed to be together somehow on this. So, but I remember your process in that, because it was such a significant moment for me here. That year is 2009, you said, right? So that year I had finally figured out what True to Intention was. I was going to help people write good books from the beginning, and they were not going to lose time, stress, and energy, going on rabbit trails, because I was going to be there to guide them. And so that was amazing. Then I get into this room. I think you were there in that first room.
Yeah,
like 250. It was the first one. It's like 250 people in there. And it was this crazy, and then it was like this first program that I was co-facilitating. And so I had helped people, but at different points along the path. And I was still in the question of like, what is it that's really holding people back? Because I can develop an outline in 2 seconds and hand it to them and be like, okay, go write. And they just look at me, glazed, like, how do I? And so I was really trying to figure out like, what is stopping people here? Because some of them are really just, I mean, they like didn't just put their feet in the mud. They're like barely breathing up above the mud pile. What happened? How do I pull them out? And it was during a conversation with you on a coaching call that it slapped me in the face. And that was, you were working on a book at the time. Do you remember the name of it?
Yes, I do. And I actually just found the proposal. That isn't it funny that I buried it? And actually it has transformed. I do. It was called Live Life Fully, and I can't remember the subtitle right now. But just this week I found the proposal. It's kind of interesting that we're having this conversation. I'm going, oh, this is, yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's great. Yeah. And so you were working on that. And then I remember that we had these phone calls, because you've already shared the story about the ex-husband. We'll just keep running with it. And I remember on the phone calls, you were telling me that like every time you got started with the writing or you'd get into it, like something insane would happen with your husband at the time. And you were just like, I don't know what this is. And it dawned on me that maybe there was some sort of connection between what you were trying to help other people do and what needed to be done with you and your husband at the time.
Yeah, and you want to know what the sad thing was? I probably could have sold that book. I had 2 agents from New York interested in that book, and I couldn't send the proposal in.
Ooh.
And it was because
and you think it was because of this?
It was because I wasn't living my truth in that marriage. That piece of my life was not congruent with my message. And I don't know, maybe some writers get to just blow stuff out there and get away with it, but transformational writers like you, me, and the people that we work with, we don't get to do that. We get to walk our talk. And sometimes we get to, when we're not quite where we need to be for the message to come out, we get to do the primary research. like those things come up.
That's such a nice way to say it.
It is that primary research. It's like, oh, there's something else that has to go in this book.
Yeah.
I've seen that happen time and time again with my own clients. Like, oh, look what's happening. And now I warn them.
Well, yeah. Well, it's one thing when you know it's coming, right? When you're like, oh, this typically happens, but you were like the first one. And I remember being on the call and I reflected that back to you, and you were like, this long pause, like, Kathy, are you still there? And you're like, yeah, I know exactly what I need to do. I need to divorce my husband. I'll call you in a few months. And I was like, wait, what? I didn't, that wasn't, oh my God, I was so panicked. But it was the first time that I really saw that connection of, I mean, the way that you put that about not being able to send out your proposal because there was a part of you that just was not living up to what you were about to put into the world. And so, for people out there who are struggling with their writing, this is like, I've come to believe that this is why we get inspired in the first place to write. Like, what if that creative spark or that idea that we have, it's like, oh yeah, we've achieved that. Yes, that you can usually see that in the pattern and the stories before, right? When we're working with our clients, but it's like, no, this is about the next hero's journey. You're about to like dive into the next level of this while you're writing about your past levels of this. And that aha with you has completely changed everything about how I coach people and the questions that I ask to kind of get to the bottom of like, what is it underneath? Like, why are you afraid to send the proposal? What might happen if you do that? And really, nudge until they can see, like, oh, this is the part that I don't want to see, or that I haven't wanted to see, and now I do, and now I know exactly what to do to get there.
Well, yeah, and it's like I saw it. I mean, I knew it was, I had a feeling it was coming. It was getting worse, you know. And I think for me, I wasn't being in integrity. I couldn't go out in the world still married to this man, pretending like everything was great. It wasn't. You know, you just, as messengers, we gotta walk the talk. I mean, that's just bottom line. You gotta walk the talk. Or at least I've got to. I've got to walk the talk. And anytime I don't, and I get slammed. It's like, okay, guess that message's not going out there yet. Got to work that one out. So I think being transparent is really important. Being raw and real in our work. Even though that's scary.
What happens, I know we've had so many conversations about this, and especially as for those of you who don't know, Kathy's on my team now. She helps me once people get through the first round of their manuscript and telling their story. I bring Kathy in because she's the next set of fresh eyes that can say, there's a story gap here, and there's this over there, and stuff that I fill in because I am the one talking to the client all the time. And so we always come up to these places in the writing where we'll be like, oh, there's something right there that isn't quite right. And we have these conversations about what that is. And it's a little bit different for each person, but where do you find people really getting stuck the most in this writing process when it comes to being transformational writers? And what happens when they get stuck there, or worse, when they like push through it without doing the transformational work?
Yeah, I don't work with those people who push through it. Write your book in 3 days or whatever. That doesn't work for me. Now, I know when you did your book, you did the transformation with it because you just could. A lot of people don't. You know, they're going to go.
I had 6 years of transformation before.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's a lot. And I think during the writing process, we transform too. So the whole process of write your book in a weekend, I think it's total bullshit. You get a heady book. I just say it was total bullshit. I think you get that's a concept that isn't connected to the heart. And right now in the world, the way it is, we need messages that are connected with the heart, messages that are transformational, give hope, and that are trustworthy. So I don't work with the people who just want to, get things out. I think the other place that we get, now the opposite end of that, I just want to read it through one more time. I just want to edit it one more time. And it's like, no. And I was guilty of that too. I was being mentored in screenwriting by a dear friend of mine who'd been a producer on 2020 and some other bigger shows. And I was going. And he says, Kathy, are you gonna send me that, your screenplay? We got to get it going. We got to get it opted. And I said, I just want to look at it one more time, Jeff. And he says, Kathy, creative projects are never completed. They're only abandoned. Mm. So I've learned to abandon, yes, it's important not to push things out too fast. It's important to have multiple readers. I have people read my stuff, and that's why, we worked together the first round. And I got a great proposal out of it that I didn't do anything with, but I know will. Don't get reader feedback. Have a proofreader and a copy editor go through it to make sure it's as polished as it can be. Is it going to be perfect? No. I've got books on my shelf by major publishers in New York, and there are mistakes. Okay, they're going to, and you can always write it differently. Yeah. It's hard for me to look at my books. Like on the Mother Lagoon, I am getting ready to revise it and bring it back out because the publisher, I don't think she's publishing anymore. It's a women's sports publishing. So I've got the rights back, and it's like, I know, just looking at it, it's like, ooh, how many times did I repeat that word? It's like, so as we grow as writers, there's always room for improvement. So either not pushing, or, either that. So the two problems I see are pushing it through or holding on too long.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting. I always laugh when we get to the point in the process where those things start to show up. So one of the ways, and maybe some of our audience members will be able to hear this for themselves, possibly, or understand maybe what their writer friends are going through on the back end, right? Is like, there's this like thing that you feel that you were really responsible for getting into the world in a good way. It's not uncommon for us to say birthing a book. It's because the amount of time, love, and energy and care that we put into this thing is probably not equivalent, but gosh darn it, it feels like it, to raising a child, and taking care of a baby at the beginning and giving it everything that it needs to become what it's supposed to be. And and so I absolutely understand that, and we honor it so much. But then there's this part where, they start to change the same word like 10 times. You're just like, okay, now we're approaching this part. Or one that's come up lately, and that I think is really interesting, is asking for a lot of feedback and not from the right people.
Oh.
So, right? How often do we have to say this? Like, because if you're asking for feedback, so I had people have already seen her on the show, Ursula Menches, right? And I remember when I sent her Upside Down Mommy, and she wasn't a mom at the time. And I remember her response, and I just basically worshiped the ground this woman walked on for all of these years, and everything that she had told me to do with my business, and like, it was gold, so much brilliance. And then I get this feedback that's like, I don't know if you should share this part, or I don't really get, and I started to panic. And then I was like, oh yeah, she's not a mom. Like, all of the moms that I'm handing this manuscript to were like, holy crap, this was the best part of the book. The part that she was like, I don't know if that's a good idea, And so the right people are the right people giving you feedback. And that like external validation thing that happens of like, I need all of these people, but it's not your audience or people connected with your audience.
Right.
Why are you?
Yeah, you've got to make sure it's the audience. And I tell people, one, when I start working with my clients, it's like, do not share this yet. There will be a time, and especially do not share it with your family. Mm-hmm. Those are the people we don't want to share our work with. Because, one, we're often writing about them. Right? At least I am. If you're in my life, you will be written about. That's kind of the way it happens. I may not name names, but, I use capital letters. So that audience. And then really working with your editor, your writing coach, to decide what is valid, what's not. And that's important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or that's another place.
How do you help people get unstuck when they're there in that place where they like are having trouble kind of making any progress, or they're over calculating and over processing?
Well, lots of times I'll do, I'm a master RIM facilitator, which means reimagining images of memory and regenerating images of memory. Sorry, Deb. And so it's a mind-body technique that goes in and finds that place that's we're stuck, holding us back. And then so that we often in conversation, it's not like, oh, let's set up a time for a session. It's like, okay, all right, let's find that place in your body. It's holding you back. And then we go into that. But, sometimes we can talk it out, but a lot of times if we're stuck in that same spot over and over and over, it's like, okay, we're going to do a mirror session. And we just drop it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. We use tools.
Yeah. Sometimes I think that writing is such a powerful tool to unearth things. And then you know how like sometimes when you're in your garden and then you like get to bedrock, it's just like there's like that point where it's you need more. You need that energetic component. And I know that this is probably part of your master's that you worked on, but the neurology, right? The what happens in our minds and in our memories and in our bodies, like where we store memories.
Mm-hmm.
And so as we have these people going back to particular parts of their lives, it's like getting a really good massage on that part until it pops open and they're like, wait, what just happened?
Yes, exactly.
Right? And they have old symptoms come back or old characters show up or some kind of weirdness. And it's because that little part is getting poked. And sometimes I know you and I have talked for years and referred energy therapists back and forth because it's like, you know, there's more to the story or there's the story can get stuck in there. So that energy component is really, really key.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good.
I tell my students at the university when I'm teaching, you know, reading is not, and writing is not just an intellectual, it's a mind body. So be aware of what you're feeling as you're reading and writing. So it's true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think what's equally important to be mindful, and this, your gardening analogy made me think about this, step away from your writing. Take a pause from it. Mm-hmm. That's important. I often get my best insights about something I'm working on when I'm taking a walk, a run, doing yoga, whatever. So anyway, I wanted to say that before we go.
Yeah, no, it's important. Yeah. And for any creative process, right? When you get stuck, sometimes you just gotta like clear the deck and get more in your body and let your mind do what it does and solve the problem that you've come upon.
It's funny, my grandmother was a knitter, right? And she would do very complex, and sometimes she would get stuck, couldn't figure something out. And she said she would just sleep on it. So it's kind of the same thing with writing.
That's good. I was worried that you were going to say she just unravels the whole thing and starts over. We've seen that too.
No, she just pauses and then goes on.
That's a good one. Oh my goodness. So when you see people out, because we have these conversations too, right? And this is the part where we get to be really mindful about this conversation. But you and I have both worked with a lot of people in the world and in a lot of different communities, a lot of different types of messengers. You know, they're the teacher messengers, and then they're like the super inspiring messengers, and then they're the transformational or the trench messengers, you know, the ones who get down and roll up their sleeves with their audience. Mm-hmm. What do you find happens when people push through this whole experience of messaging? Like, what do you see happens to them as people, to their brands, to their bottom lines? Like, what do you see?
It's funny because I could tear up because I'm thinking about some people that I've been working with. They, on a personal level, they just seem to shine. They go, there's something that, there's a sense of accomplishment. And it's probably, you know, something they've longed to do for, you know, a while, to write a book. And when they finally get there, it's like, wow. Books lend credibility, that open doors, you know, on a real practical level. You know, I've had books over the years, and last year, Ignite Your Leadership came out, and suddenly I was like busier, you know, more people started coming to me to help them write their own book. So on a personal level, that's what, so then the bottom line gets better too, right? I think confidence grows on a personal level too. And having a book, there's also this, it's not just, oh, I want to write a book, but there's also this sense of meaning. Like we've served somebody else. We've served our readers. And so that's important too.
Yeah. it gives meaning to these hard stories too, right? Like this, maybe the reason why I went through this was so that I could help this person over here, because I had to figure some things out.
Right. And it does. That's what story does. Stories always come. Think about the campfires. Our ancient ancestors would sit around campfires telling story. It wasn't just to pass the time because they didn't have TV. There was a lesson behind. There were always lessons to be shared. And so now we tell story in a lot of different ways, through books, through our Facebook posts, through our Instagram posts. We're sharing. And then it's not just for, especially in social media, it's not just for self-aggrandizement, but it's, when I post, I'm really hoping somebody gets something out of it. When we go to post this, it's like, hey, here's some writing inspiration. So that kind of thing.
Yeah. So what are some of your practices for staying in your center, for staying mindful along your journey?
So I meditate for about 40 minutes every morning. I then write my thoughts for at least 15 minutes. I believe in what I call the 15-minute practice. I can always find 15 minutes to give myself. So I'll make my coffee, sit down on my computer, and write 15, just clear what's going on. Maybe I had a dream that I want to capture. So I write, and then exercise. Oh my God, it's so important to me. I go to yoga every morning. I'm either at the yoga studio, or I'm teaching 2 days a week right now. And so I do some sort of form of exercise between my classes. I have morning and evening classes. So in the afternoon, I'll, change my clothes, go for a run. Exercise is so important. So important. Mm-hmm. And then in the evening, I do gratitude journal. And I'm also just started picking up, what did I accomplish today? My wins for the day. Because I think that a lot of times we can, I didn't get this done. Right? Well, wait a minute. What did I get done today? So I do that. Right. Yeah. I think for mindfulness in particular, to really get my day going, it's the meditation, it's the writing, it's the exercise, and then I see clients. Mm-hmm. Or work on projects.
Yeah. Those things are, I mean, how often do you get to be like 11 or 12 o'clock in the day and you're just like, what is wrong with this day? Oh yeah. I skipped my 15 minutes of writing, and now all of that is, it's all you need to do is a day of it to realize how important it is.
Mm-hmm. The other thing I do, I prayerfully ask when, as I'm getting up, is allow me to be present for anyone who needs me, including myself, and allow this day to be divinely choreographed. And that helps me be, I don't know, there's just some sort of magic. I get chills when I say that. Just some magic.
I got chills when you said divine
too. Something happens, and then, I'll get phone calls or just things, it's a little more easeful. It's like I'm not pushing through my day. Mm-hmm. It really is about taking care of me first. Mm-hmm. And I eat really well. I do, I have my, I have my, my treats, but for the most part, I'm pretty disciplined in my eating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, even just, for those listening, sometimes listening to someone who's been working at this for years and years can feel overwhelming. Like I have to change all of this at once. But really, just cutting out sugar for a day and you notice the difference, or, whatever that might be for you guys listening, that's really important. And as you said, divine choreography, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have you back on the show to talk about that. Because that's the other thing that we talk about all the time, right? Is this magic that happens with our personal stories and our client stories. So that's a little taster of the next time, because it's just It is divine choreography. You cannot
And
make it up. Someday we'll write a book about that, right?
yes,
You and
yes, we
I
need
will
to do
just
that. Yeah.
about.
Divine choreography and
Let's do
surrender. Surrender.
and so,
They kind
it's
of go
true.
hand in hand. Yeah. Yeah, maybe we ought to do that.
Yeah.
Let's do that. I think we ought to go away someplace and write for a weekend. Get it started at least.
Look, here's the thing. See, I have all these books. So this is like our outline, right? We'll just put them all in the order that they happen and then remember everything that happened alongside of it.
Yes, I
Remember
know.
when we were working on this book and this personal thing happened? We'll figure it out. We can do it fast. And people should know that you may not be able to write it in a weekend, but you can write it fast if you have really good structure and really good feedback. And Kathy and I have both like figured out how to move people really, really quickly. So don't let that bog you down.
Yeah, and I think that's important. We hold people accountable. And we have a vision that we don't because of our experiences too.
Mm-hmm. And we have tricks for building momentum, which I think is the key, like getting that belief up that it's even possible. You know, the first time that I had clients come for a whole 7 days, and my big intention for them was for them to write one chapter in 3 days, because normally it was taking weeks and months for them to finish content and send it to me. And some of them walked away with 6 chapters, and I was like, holy cow! But it's the belief. It was as soon as they got the first one, they were like, oh, dog on a bone, I'm gonna, get the rest of this churned out. That belief was just so profoundly.
Belief and having that cocoon, that nest or cocoon. You get the cocoon, I got the nest. Away from everything else, giving yourself permission to have time to do the big work.
Mm-hmm.
So,
oh my God, so much for the next time. We have to wrap it up for today. But before we go, I have some rapid fire questions for you. I know we could keep going like literally for 6 hours, right?
Yes, we could. Yes.
So the rapid fire questions. What was the first book that changed your life?
I was thinking Margaret Henry's Chincoteague Pony. I think that's when I fell in love with reading, and I knew I wanted to be a writer.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
And then how old were you? Like 8 or 9. Yep.
Mm.
Yep. I was in school.
What's your favorite book and why? Oh, this is so hard.
What favorite book? I don't have a favorite book. That's the problem. I have a lot of favorite books. I think the book that changed my life, like really transformed my life, was Jack Canfield's The Success Principles. I literally walked into Barnes and Noble in Edinburgh, Texas, and said, I need something. And I turned the corner and there was Jack's book. And then I've since gone on to study with Jack, and been on his assisting team. So I think that was probably the one that's had the most profound effect on my life.
Mm-hmm. And who's your favorite messenger and why?
Right now I'm in really studying Brendan Bouchard's books and his message. There's a lot of authenticity and truth there, and I see that he walks his talk. It was last fall, was at High Performance Academy, and I've seen him years ago, but there's something that's really transformed about him, and real. And yeah,
Golden Ticket book. Woo!
Yeah,
that book.
Yeah,
that book. Yeah.
So I'm eating his stuff up right now. Ask me in a year, might change, but right now that's it.
Yeah. Well, that happens. So, last but not least, how can our audience reach out to you if they want to follow your blog and see your writing, or get on your list to get onto this summit that you were just talking about?
Yeah. So my website is kathysparrow.com, and actually there's a downloadable chapter from Ignite Your Leadership on there. So, and there's a contact form. Yeah. And then I'll have the details for the summit coming soon. It's not quite ready to go out.
A little bit more primary research, maybe.
Yeah, well, yeah, the interviews have to be completed and then the formatting. And I really decided today that it needs to come out in spring because we are in winter. Mm-hmm. Spring is a great time to burst forward. So.
Absolutely. It's very much about visibility and being seen, right?
Yes, and that really is a whole nother about how to get over the hump of that.
Yeah. Okay. So 2 more episodes that we need to work.
Yeah, we just work on those 2.
Divine choreography.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So we're going to put the links into the webpage for everyone too. So it'll be easy for them to get a hold of you after the show and make any connections to your books and articles that you want there. So thank you so much for being on the show, but so much more for being such an important part of my journey and the journey that all of my authors take.
I just love the way we get to play together. I mean, you're my listener, my sounding board at times, and it's like, oh my God, can you believe what's going on? You're never going to believe this one. Someday we need to write that book.
We do. We need to write the book. Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to share you with my audience. And to all of you listening out there, thanks for hanging out with us today. And we look forward to seeing you the next time.